rudest thing a waiter has ever said to you. Story 1. I've told this story before on Reddit. I work as a waiter at a Thai restaurant. I have different greetings for groups. All girls, hey ladies, how's it going? All boys, hey guys, how's it going? Mixed, hey folks, how's it going? Well, this table of regulars come in, they are all females and they are all lesbians. My brain decided to have a moment there, and I mixed up all the greetings into one, hey fags, how's it going? I immediately covered my mouth and apologized for about 5 minutes explaining how that happened. I have no problems with any gay culture. I gave them 20 off and they left me a $8 tip for a 30 meal. They still come in and they'll joke about it every now and then to me. Dodged a bullet there. Story 2. My mom went on a tour of the Coors factory in Golden, Colorado several years back. At the end of the tour they give you free samples of beer. When asked what she wanted, without even thinking, she asked for a Miller Lite. He gave her a dirty look, filled the glass up halfway with water and halfway with beer, slammed it down and called her a true story. Story 3. I'm the nightlife coordinator for Caesar Entertainment in AC, so most of the managers and higher-ups know me. However, unless I'm at one of the nightclubs, the employees usually don't know me. I went to eat at one of new restaurants with a bachelorette party and decided to wait for them by the bar. I order a drink and about 5 minutes later a bartender walks over to me and says I need to move because I'm sitting there with one drink and she could be getting other customers. Mind you, it's a sit-down bar, and she singled me out. I'm waiting for some friends. I don't give a. You're sitting here alone with one drink. I have more important groups I could be waiting on. Move, tell you what. Get you manager to make me move and he'll gladly step away. It's at this point she grabs 2 security guards and the manager, all of whom know me very well. I told him to get the up and move and he told me he's not going to unless you tell him. The manager, probably because he could fire me. That's nightlife coordinator for the 4 properties. Her what? Me to her, you're fired. TLDR. Bartender was rude to me. Didn't I know I was a higher up? Got fired on the spot. Story 4 wasn't said to me, but was said about me. I was in Kansas City at this too hip little restaurant that consisted of little more than a bar, a stage for the jazz band, and a few tables. I was in from out of town visiting friends from college, and was sitting at the bar with them for about an hour waiting for a table to open up. When one finally did, the waitress came over to get us more drinks and talk about the menu, which was all prix-fixe, on which all of the items were based around meat. I'm a fairly strict vegetarian, so I had my reservations about going to the restaurant in the first place. I told the waitress very politely that I was vegetarian, and if they couldn't make me anything I was perfectly happy to just nurse my martini for the rest of the night. About 15 minutes later, one of the chefs came out and sat down at the table. The first words out of her mouth were, so one of the waitresses came in to tell me that some dorky looking wanted us to make him a vegetarian meal. And what did you say to her? I replied, well, first I told her to not call my best friend a TLDR. Went to a restaurant where my best friend from college is one of the chefs, and the waitress unknowingly talked about me to her. Story 5. I visited Italy during high school and had no idea cranberries and cranberry juice was mostly an American thing. I asked a waiter for cranberry juice and he responded with, and where would I get that from? The moon. My parents laughed their asses off. Story 6. Went with a friend and her family to dinner to one of their favorite restaurants. They're white, I'm East Asian. Waiter comes over to take our order, asks everyone what they want, then looks at me and says, let me guess, rice. Big laugh from him, crickets from everyone else. Never went back to that place again. Story 7. We don't serve your kind in here. To my black girlfriend at the time. If I knew that Denny's in Ohio in the 90s was so racist. This one happened about 3 days ago, so perfect timing. A friend and I went to an ale house, where we've been a few times before, and got a server who had waited on us before. He seemed nice enough, until he came over and dropped this bomb. God, it's hot in here. I'm sweating like at a clan meeting. Whoa, how is that an okay thing to say at a table? Story 8. Assuming the Italian had any sorts of standards, telling staff you wanted to give it to your dogs is a pretty big insult. Anyway, once at a Chinese restaurant the waiter yelled at me for only leaving a 10 tip. I usually give at least 15 for average service, but this was beyond bad. He refused to let us order some items because we wouldn't like them. He never brought out utensils or napkins or water, then he brought out the wrong food and brought the bill unprompted. 10 was generous. At a Thai place, the waiter told me I couldn't handle a dish because it was too spicy for a white person. I ordered it anyway, and it was obvious he asked for a mild version. When I asked why, he repeated that I was too white. Actually, I've tried getting that dish full strength, but every time I try they either refuse or secretly make it mild. And yes, I know it should be spicier because a friend of mine works there. Story 9. I was a waiter for a long time. I made decent money and liked working nights and being around people and staying in motion, but it takes a certain type to enjoy the work and do it well. I learned most of what I know about waiting tables from an older guy who took me under his wing when I got my first server job. It was a really nice, expensive restaurant, and new servers were expected to backwaiter for a few weeks before they were trusted enough to take tables themselves, so I was backwaitering for this guy, who we'll call M, and this happened party of 8 couples, celebrating something, not a birthday, not an anniversary. Probably business guys closed a deal and taking the wives out for a night on the town. Cocktails flow, appetizers disappear, finally M is making the rounds, taking orders. He's already discussed the night specials in detail, already sold a couple of 40 entrees. He gets to the loud guy. This guy has a few drinks in him and much to the chagrin of his visibly embarrassed wife has decided to impress everyone with how awesome and knowledgeable he is. So of course he asks M to repeat all the specials. M does. Dude starts drilling down to specific ingredients, even asking what kind of herbs are in the béarnaise sauce. It's tarragon, moron, it's a béarnaise sauce. Now, this is at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. M and I have 3 other tables of 4 already seated. I'm doing what I can, but M is trapped at this 8 top. Loud guy keeps asking stupid questions and wanting to chat. Finally M says, "Sir, I'm sorry, but I have other tables that need my attention. May I take your order?" Loud guy freaks, "How rude, blah blah blah." M looks at him and says, "I'm sorry sir, I didn't realize I was here to entertain you," and then he starts dancing. Like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever disco moves, he boogies around the whole table, says to me, "Get this guy's order," and pelvic thrusts his way back to the kitchen, leaving the 8 top speechless. The guy ordered a steak, medium well. My brother and I were both adopted from Korea and my parents are straight up white. When I was 8, brother was about 11, we went to an Italian restaurant and the waiter was literally yelling at us like we couldn't speak English. My dad is very conservative, laid-back kind of guy. He looks in the eye and says, "Shit, racist enough, that's my daughter you're yelling at who reads English at a college level, can speak it and understand it just fine without you yelling in her ear. Thanks, you can tone it down. Yeah, our meal was free." Story 10. How about the inverse? I spoke to my manager and we think it would be best for our matron to find you a reservation at a different restaurant this evening. Classiest way I've ever been thrown out of a place. Story 11. Wife and I finish our meal at a Mexican joint a few years back. The waiter comes over and says to my wife, "Ma'am, I'm obligated by policy to offer you an after-dinner mint, but please don't think I personally am making any judgment on your obviously pleasant and fragrant breath." With that he places a single mint by her plate, turns to me and says, "Here," and empties his apron pocket of about 100 mints straight into my lap. I've never tipped a rude waiter so much, but we were laughing for the rest of the evening. I went to Budokan in Philadelphia with a group of friends. I was sitting next to a chubby girl. The waitress came and was taking orders. When it was the chubby girl's turn to order, she took her time contemplating and ordered a salad and water. The waitress muttered under her breath but loud enough where I heard it clearly, as did the girl, "Who are you foolin'?" The chubby girl face turned bright red and those close by that heard were shell-shocked and didn't say anything, not wanting to embarrass her further. Needless to say, I never went back. Story 12. You're starting to become a very needy table. This is after they made my steak wrong, so I sent it back and I asked them for another bottle of 60 wine. I was a little pissed. Story 13. I decided I wanted to take my boyfriend out to dinner while he was in town. Everything was fine until the server brought the check and I got out my credit card and handed it over. The server points to my boyfriend and said, "Does he beat you too? I guess is it abusive for a male to allow a female to pay on a date?" Story 14. Not to me but to a friend. Back in high school, me and a few friends went to Applebee's to get a late dinner one night. After we sit down, our waiter asks us for our drink orders and my friend asks for a Diet Coke. After our waiter leaves, we start making fun of my friend by calling him gay for ordering a Diet Cokies. I know, immature, but we were in high school and apparently orientation was a proper insult at the time. Apparently our waiter overheard us making fun of our friend because when he returned with our drinks, when he handed my friend his drink, he said to him, "Hey, race your Diet Coke." TLDR, a waiter called my friend for ordering a Diet Coke. Story 15. Not a waitress but a hostess walked me over to a table that still had dirty plates on it and tried to seat me. I asked if I could have the table next to it that was cleaned off. She rolled her eyes, huffed and then threw the menus at me and stormed off. It was so ridiculously bad that I just laughed. Story 16. It's not so much what she said, but what she didn't say. I was at a restaurant with my 2 employers who are white, and I am not. The waitress asked them what they wanted to drink, and she didn't even acknowledge me. She didn't even take my order, and one of the guys I was with had to order for me. Story 17. I was at dinner with my parents and a group of their friends. The waitress was being extremely rude. She did things like say to our one overweight friend, "Are you sure you want 2 entrees? I'm not wrapping it up." Well, one member of our party was undergoing chemo at the time and was wearing a non-obvious wig. She is not one to be bullied. At one point during the meal, the waitress made a snide comment to her, and she stopped, put down her utensils, and pulled the wig off of her bald head. She looked directly at the waitress and said, "Don't with me, I'm sick," then went back to her meal. It was wonderful. Keep the change, you filthy animal. Story 18. In reverse. The most horrifying tipping experience I've ever had was on a first date with a guy at a semi-fancy restaurant in LA. We were seated at our table, having a good time when the waiter came to take our order. After ordering, my date put $21 bills on the table and informed the waiter that every time he did something incorrectly, he would take $1 away, and for every 5 minutes we waited for our food he would take away 2. My date ended up leaving $3 to an incredibly nice waiter, so I left 25 in tip, called him N and never called him again. Edit for spelling. Story 19. Not a waiter but, at a shoe store, I asked for a pair of shoes in my size, female, size 10. I have big monster feet, I know, and the girl looked at me and said, "We don't have any shoes that size. I don't think they make women's shoes that size." I didn't know a woman could have feet that big. Story 20. My granduncle was a Navy Seabee in his younger days, and before he died I took him to some kind of Seabee reunion at the naval base in our state. On the way home we stopped at some random joint to get some food. My uncle ordered a whole rotisserie chicken. When the waitress brought it to him, he noticed that it was missing a drumstick. My uncle got the waitress' attention and told her that his chicken was missing a leg. Without missing a beat she said, "You gonna eat it or dance with it?" Story 21. Not something he said, But something he did. I had just left the hospital and some friends picked me up to get a bite to eat. I had a third-degree ACL tear in my knee, so I was limping around wearing this hip-to-ankle leg brace. You couldn't miss it. We grab a table, and him on the outside, not beside the wall, but next to the walkway, with my bad leg tucked safely under the table and my good leg protecting me on the outer edge. Our waiter is this curt, unfriendly dude who was basically glaring the whole time. Eventually, when he brings our food slamming plates down roughly, he manages to kick my bad knee onto the table while reaching to put food down on the far side. This on its own I wouldn't hold against him. But it hurt, and I yelled out, pretty much in his ear as he was leaning in front of me. Dude doesn't even react. My friend picks up on it. You just kicked her. The waiter just walks away. So my friends decide that he will get a 1 tip on each person's bill. I'm not an advocate of tipping badly, but having had a fairly shitty day end with being kicked on my already injured leg, I was okay with it given the circumstances. My one awesome friend writes a note on her receipt explaining why he was getting a bad tip. Then we get up and slowly make our way outside. At this point the waiter tracks chases us down to defend his honor, or something. I didn't kick a girl with an ACL injury. He seems outraged. Yes you did. That would be me. I reply, exhausted and kind of shocked that it was even a question. My friends step in to relate the story of how I even yelled and he was totally oblivious. He's like, well then I'm sorry. He sure as didn't sound sorry. What did he want us to do? Go back in and give a better tip? He turns angrily back into the restaurant. The clincher is he went in. Another couple was leaving and they overheard everything. Looking at my leg, the woman says, he kicked you. I passed by him inside earlier and he elbowed me and didn't say a word. What a TLDR, waiter kicks my injured leg, I yell. He doesn't acknowledge it at all until we don't tip him and he hunts us down outside the restaurant. Edit grammar and stuff. Story 22 went to Starbucks about 6 months ago and ordered a mocha or something similar. Barista, that's a girly drink. After I pick it up, I'm at the front of the counter and she's right next to me. She walks all the way to the other side of the counter to set it down, instead of just handing it to me. Thinking she was joking, I say, me, laughing, oh, I have to walk all the way over there, barista. Straight face, you look like you could use the exercise and not overweight. Story 23, I arrived late and met my friends at a 24-hour breakfast place. They were eating and I sat down. The waitress came over and I asked if I could have a glass of water. No, and then she walked off. Never got water. Story 24, I am a UK size 10, which is a US size 6. I believe, edit, apparently it may be an 8. Googling was inconclusive. I informed my waiter at Mexican restaurant chain Oaxaca that I am a vegan. He said I thought vegans were meant to be thin. Story 25, I'm fat, like unabashedly fat. We went to one of the Mexican places, my friends, and I usually hit up and ordered a regular Coke. The waiter came back with a Diet Coke. I took a sip and politely told him that I ordered a regular. He smiled, told me he thought I needed the diet more and walked off. No tip, bub. Story 26, not exactly a waiter, but an airline hostess story. I fell asleep on a flight, and I guess my foot was in the aisle. I have to guess, because I was asleep. I woke up when the drink cart was driven straight over my foot, to which I replied, GLARGH. And that is why we don't put our feet in the aisles, passengers. And then she ran over my foot with the back wheel. Luckily it was just a short hop from ATL to LAX, so it was only another 2 hours of not killing her with my bare hands. I ended up getting a first-class upgrade on the flight back after I called up to complain. Story 27, sometimes when I go out with my girlfriend Chinese to an Asian restaurant, they give her chopsticks and me, white boy, a knife and fork. Maybe they think it's thoughtful, but no one likes to have their ethnicity pointed out at dinner. Story 28, we were in a Portuguese restaurant and we asked the waiter if he was Portuguese. He said, no, I am French, and stares at us. So my dad says, oh, that's nice, we are Portuguese, but France and Portugal are near each other. No big difference. The waiter replies, yes, but French people aren't full of hair, and he never came back. Story 29, it wasn't anything the waiter said, but his actions spoke loud and clear. My boyfriend, my friend, and I went to a bar and grill that was pretty nice. The waiter came to take our order and started with my boyfriend and was very friendly with him. When it came around to me, he took my order in a rush. Our food comes, but I get mine last. The waiter comes around to check on us, and specifically asks my boyfriend if the steak was cooked right and if he liked it. He didn't ask anyone else, just him. When time came to box the leftovers, the waiter tosses my box onto my food and helps to box my boyfriend's food. I even sat there to see if he would do the same for me, not that I expected him to, and he walked away after helping my boyfriend. Everybody just kinda looked at each other and we started laughing. Story 30, after spilling some apple juice, the waitress said something like, I'm sorry, I'll get you some napkins, then immediately followed that up with, even though it's your fault. I knew it was my fault. I also knew you were apologizing in a sympathetic way, not taking responsibility. Story 31, not a waiter but an owner, reposting with edits. This restaurant review I wrote after the fact and posted on every review site I could find. My then boyfriend, now husband, was looking for a place to take his parents for their 50th birthdays. We'd been to this place before and loved it. Several other relatives were coming too, so we made a reservation for 12. The trouble started early, when we were seated at a table, actually several short tables thrown together too cramped for our numbers. The tables were pushed so close to the wall, no more than a foot or so away, that the larger men in the family all were forced to sit on the other side of the table, and even the smaller people felt cramped. If the place had only had this tightly packed front room in which to seat us, the poor seating would have been understandable, but the restaurant also had a back room large enough to accommodate us, as well as an outdoor area suitable for a party of our size. What was merely an uncomfortable situation became obnoxious when, after about 15 minutes, the owner approached us and asked if we could all shift down a little so he could take one of the short tables and give it to someone else. Since we were already squished and had begun eating the bread, enjoying our drinks, and using the place settings, my boyfriend's father said a polite but firm no, the owner started arguing with us, even sitting himself down at the table in a chair briefly vacated for a bathroom trip to persuade us to move. He was getting pretty exercised. Eventually, he stalked away muttering, "I just thought you could help me out." After that, my boyfriend's aunt left the table to talk to the owner, basically telling him that we were there for a special occasion and would appreciate it if he didn't speak rudely to the birthday boy. He wasn't impressed. He told her that if she didn't like it, we could all leave. We probably should have taken his advice. Our poor server tried mightily to salvage the evening, but his boss could be heard muttering things about us under his breath whenever he passed our table. On several occasions, he started in with members of our party about how we could sit more compactly if we would shift how we were sitting mid-meal. Towards the end of the disaster that was dinner, the owner came over one last time and tried to make peace. He soothingly admitted to my boyfriend's mother that we had all gotten off to a bad start and that he may have been at fault but could not end it like that. Within 30 seconds of his apology, he followed up with something to the effect of, "But if you had just squeezed a bit tighter like I asked you to, we all would have been much happier." When it came time for dessert, my boyfriend asked the server if it would be possible for his parents' desserts to have candles put in them, and if the rest of us could order dessert too. The server was midway through taking our dessert orders when the owner pulled him away, shaking his head vigorously. The owner came back to tell us that there were simply too many people waiting for tables and he couldn't serve us dessert. Furious, we paid and walked out the door. Performing for the group of people waiting to be seated, the owner called after us in a saccharine voice, "Have a wonderful evening," to which my boyfriend's father replied, "Well, never have one here again." The owner said, "Never come back to my restaurant," and slammed the door behind us. Story 32. My wife and I went to a fairly nice restaurant with friends, but we only brought cash, so we were calculating a very generous estimate of the total as we were ordering to ensure we would be able to cover it. When we got the bill, it was significantly higher than we had estimated, still within our cash budget, but just barely. Turns out they recently increased the price on almost everything on the menu but failed to have new menus printed. That would have been nice to know before we placed our orders, rather than when the bill was on the table. So we gave the waitress all the cash we brought with us, which unfortunately left her an embarrassingly minor tip 10 on a 190-ish bill. As we were getting ready to leave, the waitress came up and basically called me every possible insult within the reasonable vicinity of cheap, fake and loser due to the tip. Seriously, she was ranting at me for a good 5 minutes in front of our friends and other patrons. And fortunately for us, the manager, I felt bad about the tip before she had said anything, but once she did, I kindly pointed out that her tip would also have been the entirety of the 40 in price increases that she had failed to mention. The manager then walked up and fired her on the spot. His apology to us was that the next meal for us and the rest of our group would be on him. No limit, needless to say. None of us have gone back there since then. Story 33. My one friend got kicked out of a pub by a waiter because it smelled so awful. The waiter said, "That's disgusting, get out." To be fair to the waiter, his lactose-intolerant farts are quite horrendous. Story 34. Do you want me to get the chief out here? He's 6'3", FYM 5'9". The steak was undercooked. I enjoy a good rare steak as much as anyone, but the inside wasn't cool and red, it was cold and purple. I sent it back twice and when it came out the third time still undercooked, I told her to forget it, I was done. Everyone else was done eating and I was filled up on bread at that point. She keeps harassing me, telling me what a fine steak it is and to just tell them how I wanted it cooked. When I told her I wasn't interested, she got rude. She told me she was cutting me off after 2 beers. I finally tell her, "Just leave me alone, I'm done talking to you." She comes back 5 minutes later and says something like, "You're stuck with me, this is my table." A few minutes more and that's when she says, "Do you want me to get the chef out here? He's 6'3". I said, "Why, is he going to kick my and force the steak down my throat?" At that point she tried to walk away, but I was beyond pissed, so I stood up and said, "Yeah, get his out here and he'll shove this raw steak up." As she left, didn't come back, the chef didn't come out either. The manager came over, apologized profusely, offered to get me a new steak, and card for a free meal, etc., but I had no intention of ever going back there to eat. Without a doubt the worst experience I've ever had at a restaurant. I always treat waitstaff very nicely and I tip well. I've done their job and I know how much it sucks sometimes, so I can easily forgive a waitress that is in a bad mood or not very friendly. Her reaction though, to a valid complaint, was way over the line. Story 35. I live in France. There's not enough space for me to write all that's been said to me in the last 4 years. I'd need a whole, or should I say Putine website dedicated to the rudeness of French service. Story 36. Waiter, I just want to let you know this is my last day, so I don't give a what you think before I could say anything. He smiled and started telling my wife and I how I'd just found out he got a teaching job in Mass. After looking for 5 years, he lets us know he was only joking, but had been dying to say that to someone since he found out. He gave us excellent service and received a good tip. Story 37. One evening my former business partner was taking his parents out to an expensive steakhouse called Durant's in Phoenix, as they were just in for the weekend from the Midwest. Their waiter was extremely swishy, and once he heard that they in town from a heartland, he became somewhat cold and indifferent to them. At one point my friend's mom notices that her freshly laid down steak knife is covered in dried steak sauce and bits of food, and is gingerly examining it with a look of ew on her face. When the waiter comes up to deliver their drinks, she presents the filthy utensil to him and asks, "Can you tell me what this is?" He takes the knife, looks it over and without acknowledging its obvious state of hygiene, says with a condescending smirk, "It's a knife, ma'am, you use it to cut your steak." My business partner, usually known for being very easygoing, just about loses it. He tells the guy in his best no tone, "Give me that knife." The waiter hands it back to him. He then says, "Now get your boss over here right now." The waiter was fired that night and their entire meal comped. Story 38. Several years ago, my family want a local place. Denny's comes to mind, but I don't remember if they do seating or not. Either way, it was some chain where they seat you. Sorry, I was a kid at the time. Edit asked parents. It was definitely Denny's. There was a black family ahead of us, dad, mom, little girl. Not badly dressed, obviously not dressed up, but it was clear they weren't a bad crowd. The restaurant was almost completely empty customer-wise. They waited for 25 minutes for someone to seat them, finally got sick of it and left to go to the place across the street. As soon as they walk out the door, someone came to seat us. We left for the restaurant across the street. Edit forgot to mention we approached the family at the other restaurant, gave them our contact info, and told them if they want to sue we'd back them up. Apparently they decided not to, although judging from Denny's Wikipedia page they very likely would have won. Oops. Story 39. I was meeting a very prominent and highly respected public figure at the club. He had told my group that the dress code was casual, so we were mostly wearing jeans and dress or polo shirts. When we got there, the maitre d' looked us up and down as though we were the scum off his shoe and said, in the most posh, stuck-up tone I have ever heard, "I believe you'll have trouble finding a table here wearing dungarees," and he started to walk away. Then we told him who we were here to meet, and the guy nearly himself. Story 40. I once went to meet up some friends at an Asian restaurant. I'm 23, but unfortunately I look like I'm 16 or 17. It's a semi-awesome thing to have anyway. When I get there the lady tells me we don't serve underaged kids without adults. I get this often, so all I do is flash her my driver's license, but for some reason I guess she thought it was fake, so she ends up grabbing it, cutting it up in front of me and then phoning the police. Fun times were had. Edit, since so many people have asked, when the cops showed up and ran my license, they told the hostess that it was real. I ended up getting a free meal, and the manager asked me if I would like the girl fired. I told her no, not because she didn't deserve it, she did, but because I don't hold grudges against people's stupidity. Story 41. When ordering a dessert at Olive Garden, a waiter looked pronouncedly at my belly and said, "Are you sure you should do that?" I was 7 months pregnant. Story 42. Bitched my mom out for not tipping enough at a fancy restaurant in front of dinner guests at the table. To be fair, my mom didn't tip enough because she's too vain to wear her reading glasses in public. But holy, he was so rude I would have taken the bill back and changed the tip amount to 001. Story 43. About 15 years ago, I took my parents to a pretty nice restaurant for Mother's Day brunch. They were a little late getting brunch started that day, leaving a crowd of about 40 to 50 in a line with nothing to do but stare at an empty dining room while the staff flitted around joking with each other instead of seating anyone. After roughly 30 minutes we were seated. When I saw our server approach, 20 minutes later, I turned my coffee cup right side up to accept a nice blast of Java and noticed that the cup was dirty. Dirty isn't really the right word. There was something stuck to the inside rim of the cup that looked like a slug-shaped wad of chewing tobacco. Our server went around the table pouring coffee, saving me for last. At which point I said, "Can I get another cup please? This one is dirty," with my nicest "please don't spit on my food" smile. She took a look at the cup, slug and all, then back to me, then back to the cup. She grabbed the cup, looked me right in the eye like a boss, and said, "Your mother didn't raise you right." She then turned and left. I was so flabbergasted by her remark that an appropriate retort didn't become apparent to me until she was about 50 feet away. When I screamed at the top of my lungs, "I guess you didn't really want a tip anyway, did you, fat ass?" Just like in the movies, the now full restaurant goes completely silent with every eyeball in the place on me. We stayed for whatever reason, and the server attempted to apologize several times, to the point I had to ask her to stop annoying me with it and just do her job. Not a single tip was given that day. Story 44. I used to be a server at a Thai restaurant. One couple asked how spicy a dish was and I told them without thinking that they would have to in a river tomorrow to keep from setting their house on fire. They laughed so hard they almost cried. Not exactly rude, but not exactly a nice thing to tell someone before a meal. Story 45. Sometimes, after a long day in the service industry, you don't even notice that you've become a little bit rude. I got let go for the following customer. "Excuse me sir, what's goat cheese?" Me pause for a moment to see if she's kidding. "Why, it's cheese, made from the milk of a goat, earthy and a bit tart." It was the way that I said it, I couldn't help it, it was just condescending. I'm always very proper and well-spoken at a table fine dining and it just seemed so snooty. The owner was right behind me. At the end of the shift, she told me that I needed a break from serving tables. She was right. Story 46. The rudest thing a waiter did was serve me a slice of a chicken sandwich. I am a Sikh and don't really have many dietary restrictions, but I assumed the waiter thought I was Muslim. I just took out the slice and ate it. Story 47. This is the greatest thread I've read, by the way. I used to work at a country club, and I remember on my first day, my boss strictly advised that if you drop a glass or plate anything that could will shatter. advise everyone to stay away from the area, stay seated and whatnot until the mess is cleaned up, and I mean strongly advised it. So of course a week or so later I was walking between a few tables one night and had a couple of glasses of water. I got one of them to the table, greeting the older couple, and then went for the other, and it fell to the floor, shattering. Panicked, I continued to say, "I'm so sorry, please forgive me." "Wait just one moment and I'll get this cleaned up," the older man laughed, and said, "It's all good, you'll be right back anyway." Need to hit the men's room. Right then I see my boss staring me down, and in a panic I yelled, "Sit down and stay calm." Luckily he looked at me, and burst out laughing. "All right then, I'll wait, my bladder ain't that bad yet." My boss and all my coworkers thought it was the most hilarious thing they'd seen. Even though that was over 6 years ago, my friends from there still won't let me live it down. Not a waiter but a bartender, so hopefully close enough. My friends play every Tuesday at open mic night at a restaurant and bar. I've never seen them play there but decide to go since I had the day and the next one off. I'd been busy traveling all day and had only 5 on me. I buy 1 beer with this money and chill all night at a table. Later I find out we're not leaving and get 1 more drink with my debit card. First time EVR using it to buy a drink ever. As I'm leaving, the bartender walks over to me at the door and goes, "Bartenders make less than minimum wage. You're never welcomed here again, go yourself." I tried to explain I didn't have any money and then that I didn't know how one could tip with a debit card, but he would not listen. So the next Tuesday, my friends are on stage and go, "Raise your hand if you are only here to see us." 20 ppl raised their hands, easily more than half the people there. He pointed at the bartender, explained what happened, and said, "No one tipped this man," ending with, 20 ppl bought drinks and tipped you last week, 1 person didn't, and now you've lost all these people for good. Great going. Also I work all day as a landscaper seal coater, and my father was a bartender when he lost his job, so this just really got to me for a few days, which was the worst part.